It's season 7 of Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. We hit the 300 episode milestone this year, so don't forget to subscribe or follow us. We have a lot more to talk about. This week we have 2 returning guests and a first-timer. Elizabeth Engel's back. She's talking about her recent paper, Lean at 10. We're also joined by her co-author, Jamie Notter, another returning guest. And our first-timer is Chrissy Bagby, here to share her case study about lean management. It's Lean at 10, Culture Still Eats Strategy. It's October 6, 2025. Welcome to episode 301. Hey, everybody, it's Monday, October 6th. Can you believe it's the fourth quarter of 2025 already? I can't. But we're going to cheer you up with this fascinating episode of Radio Free 501c. Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Cecilia Supp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting and the host of this 300 plus episode podcast. We've broken the barrier. I am so happy to have some of my friends here to celebrate episode 301. So very excited to have Elizabeth Engel, Jamie Notter, and Chrissy Bagby here to talk about their latest white paper on Lean at 10, and they're going to explain what that means in a minute. But before we do that, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to our global audience, wherever you may be. And if you haven't remembered to subscribe or follow us yet, please do, because we have so many fantastic people on the show, so many in-depth conversations. That's why we are at episode 301, because there's still so much to talk about and so many new ideas to learn from. But we're going to start off with our guests introducing themselves and telling us a little about what they do. And we're going to start with Elizabeth. Welcome back, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here once again, Cecilia. So as Cecilia mentioned, my name is Elizabeth Engel. I'm the chief strategist of Spark Consulting, where I provide mostly membership strategy work for and advice for associations, but also relevant to today's conversation, lean startup consulting, which is what we're going to be talking about in a minute.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Always good to have you here. And I love your white papers. I just want to put in a plug for those. If you go to Elizabeth's website, which she will share with you near the end of the episode, you can find her library of past white papers. They're all excellent. Let's move on to Jamie. Jamie, good to see you again.
Yes, no, very excited to be here. Thank you for having me again. My name is Jamie Notter. I am a culture scientist, and my company is now jamienotter.com. Like, it's all branded around me. This is something, by the way, that just happened in the last few weeks, and I'm super excited about it. My work is on workplace culture and the future of work, and I do both consulting around that and speaking and research. I love doing the research on this, and I'll be sharing a bit about that research today.
Oh, that's great. And I again got to put another plug here. Humanize is still one of my favorite books. And one of my favorite quotes is, just because everybody else is doing it doesn't make it a best practice. So glad to have Jamie here. With all this brain power, I don't know if this episode can hold it, but we have a third guest today with also another big brain. This is an interesting episode. We have returning guest and a first-time guest, Chrissy Bagby. So welcome to the show, Chrissy.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. So honored to be joining the gang here today. I'm Chrissy Bagby. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at the American Association of Veterinary State Boards. I've been an association executive in this space for almost 2 decades now, primarily membership, event, and now really looking at strategic deployment in the association that I work in now, really aligning our operations with a strategy to try to accomplish our goals.
Oh, well, that's great. And welcome. I read your case study in the white paper, and it was really fascinating. So I know the audience will want to hear some more about that in a few minutes. But let's go back to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you wrote the original lean startup paper 10 years ago with Guillermo, and I love Guillermo, but I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right. Guillermo Ortiz de Zarate. What motivated you to write that first paper and then revisit it with Jamie 10 years later?
Yeah, so in 2014, I had the white paper that I wrote that year was on evidence-based decision-making in associations. And Guillermo, or as he goes by in the association space, G, and his association at the time, the National NCARB, the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, were one of our case studies there. And so as my co-author, Peter Housel from Mariner Management, and I were kind of doing the circuit of doing presentations on evidence-based decision-making, we would often try to have one of our or more of our case studies with us. So G was often with us. And he and I got talking about this product development methodology that was relatively new to both of us, and actually relatively new, generally speaking, at that time, that we were both really intrigued by, called Lean Startup Methodology. We had both read the book The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, who's the guy who originated the methodology. And we realized that it was sort of a more sophisticated application of evidence-based decision making related to, specifically for the association context, non-dues revenue programs, products, and services. And you know, NCARB was starting to experiment with it with some of their work, and I was kind of using it, you know, with some of my client engagements. And we both realized that we were really interested in this, and we thought that it had a lot of applicability in the association space. So we decided that we wanted to take that on together as our next white paper. So fast forward 10 years. And, you know, last fall, G gets in touch with me again and says, hey, you know, like, I don't know if you realized we're coming up on 10 years since we did the original Lean Startup white paper. Are you interested in revisiting this topic? And I said, yeah, that would be great. For a couple of reasons, which we articulate in the paper itself. One being that in the past decade, there hasn't been nearly as much adaptation or adoption of the methodology in the association space as I had kind of hoped to see. And the other thing is, and this is very much kind of the point of the new white paper, one thing that G and I realized in 10 years of working with these concepts is that the hard part of lean startup methodology isn't necessarily the tools, the techniques, the methodology, you know, filling out a lean canvas, et cetera, all that kind of stuff. It's culture change. And so, you know, as G and I got talking about it, we realized that we wanted to bring in Jamie to work on it with us. And then in the midst of all this, G got his first CEO position at the American Society of Appraisers. And so Jamie was able to step in to be my straight up co-author, and we shifted NCARB over to being once again one of the case studies, as G was a little bit occupied getting into his new new position. But yeah, you know, I've just kind of done the a little bit of a spoiler alert, but like the point of the white paper is lean startup methodology is still really applicable for associations, but you know, we've got some culture change issues with actually making use of it.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Wow. What a fascinating history of just of the paper, let alone of associations trying to apply these concepts. Because you're right, especially the design thinking is what jumped out at me. And that's something we've also been talking about for well over 10 years. And I think that's why it did jump out at me, because we're still trying to get to that point. But then this makes a lot of sense as to Q, our culture scientist, and what got you interested in wanting to work on this, Jamie?
Well, so I mean, first off, again, repeating the shout out you did for Elizabeth and her white papers, like no one does white papers as well as Elizabeth Engel, in my opinion. And I mean, like she knocks it out of the park. It's research based. It's not fluff. It's not a marketing, you know, tool to like get your email. Like she doesn't even collect email addresses, right? Like that is a breath of fresh air. So if Elizabeth says, hey, will you work on a white paper with me? The answer is yes. Like it could be about cooking and I would still do it, right? But this one was about culture. And again, we've known each other a long time and we've had these conversations that association culture, it's interesting because I think associations, broadly speaking, have really amazing cultures. They're totally connected to the mission. They're totally connected to their purpose. They are customer sort of / member focused in a way that you don't see in the corporate world as much as you do in associations. And that's one reason why I work with associations and people say, oh, well, I'm new here. I've only worked here 12 years. Mm-hmm. Right? Like they have, a lot of them have really good retention and like really what you would call strong cultures. What they don't see is that they have patterns inside their culture that make it impossible to do the things that they say they want to do. And that's been the focus of my research in the last 10 years. Is like, you say you're about collaboration, but you're not if it's cross-departmental. You say you're about transparency, but not if it means I have to let go of information and let go of control. And in this particular case, you say you're about innovation and you want to unlock new value, but you're not willing to look bad. You're not willing to fail. You're not willing to learn from failure. You're not willing to do these things. And they're not spoken parts of the culture, but they are embedded in the culture. And so it's one of those frustrations that I've experienced that this paper allowed me to write about, which is you want this stuff and you can't do it because your culture isn't letting you. And if you could just make some really simple changes to the way you do things, I think it would unlock this potential. I was literally at an Associations North event a few weeks ago and talking about culture patterns and innovation. And one of the people in the audience said, "Okay, we want this, but like we don't know how to do it." I'm like, "No, you do know how to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, talk to Elizabeth, because this methodology exists. It's not, to her point, it's not that complicated." So it's not the knowledge of how to do it, it's the shifting sort of approaches to your culture to unlock it. So I was super excited to be asked to co-author this and continue this conversation.
Well, and that's why in this paper, when I read the quote, and I'm not sure who contributed this quote since it's co-authored, but the quote about replacing "we can't" with "what if we could," because that's really a thought process I've always had. Don't say we can't, say what if. What if we try? If it doesn't work, you don't do it again. It's a very simple mindset, but those simple things tend to be the hardest thing for people to grasp. And they create these obstacles in the culture. And I know we all probably have thousands of examples of that, but I think a better example will be shifting over to Chrissy and her experience applying Lean at 10 and sharing some of your lessons and your experience. And I noted in the paper that you also worked directly with Elizabeth on this. So getting that outside objective opinion is very helpful. So over to Chrissy.
Yeah, everything that Elizabeth and Jamie are mentioning, I was making a couple notes because it's ringing a lot of bells. I mean, that idea about don't just say you're about it, but be about it. How do you actually do that, right? Like, because that's really what's hard for people. And as an organization, you can say we want to be innovative and we want to take these big swings at something. But when you get in the midst of it, it feels uncomfortable. It can feel really uncomfortable. It can feel really risky. You may analyze the risk up front, but once you get into the middle of it, then there's risk for the organization, and then people who are involved in the process can feel personal risk for themselves in this. If you're asking employees to take big swings, what happens when they fail? How do you look at failure as advancing the organization and advancing a staff member's career, and really trying to bring that and build that into the system? So when the situation that the AAVSB found itself in is we had a very innovative board that came in, and we had a new CEO coming in, and he was very visionary. And so we had been around for about 55 years and had been very stable, and everything was running smoothly. And when the innovative board and our innovative leadership came in and wanted to change the dynamic and say, we've been very successful, but this is a perfect time for us to try some new things. We did what most organizations do, and you go for the low-hanging fruit, and you're still hitting it out of the park, right? Because you're the low-hanging fruit, it makes sense. When it starts to feel really different is when you start to get into the brand new things, new service lines that you've never done before, or trying to reach new customers that you've never reached in a certain way before. And those sort of big swings feel really different. And what we found was that we tried to take our first couple big swings into those new areas, sort of doing it the same way we'd always done it, because we'd always been successful. Why wouldn't we be successful? And what we found out was it was really hard. It was really hard to try new things in new markets with new people and to really figure out what we didn't know. And so after we took a couple of those big swings and they didn't pan out and people were feeling a little uneasy, we decided, and I was looking at what can we do to change this? And there were a couple options that were for us, but it was how do we level up the entire staff, not just bring in somebody who's really good at this and who has all that knowledge in themselves. But we wanted the whole to lift the entire boat of the organization. And that is when we brought in Elizabeth, because what I started looking for is I could close myself off in a room for 3 months and try to figure out how to do this and read all the books myself. But we needed something quicker than that. I needed somebody to bounce ideas off of. And that's where we came to Elizabeth and said, who's done this kind of thing before about developing new products and who's got something out there? And through our conversations with Elizabeth, we decided on the Lean Startup and started working with her so she could get us to where we needed to go quicker.
And I think one of the things that's really interesting about, and I've seen this repeated, multiple times with people using Lean Startup, is you don't just kind of like open up the box and do it. So, one of the things that happened at AAVSB is, we did an investigation of various different types of product development methodologies to start off with, to say, like, we think we probably want to use Lean Startup, but let's be sure. And even once we had done that and said, yeah, we're definitely sure that this is the methodology we want to use, it required a little bit more effort, on the part of Chrissy, on the part of myself, and on the part of Casey McGuire, who was part of the kind of the core project team on the AAVSB staff, to say, okay, that's great, but like, what does the AAVSB flavor of Lean Startup look like? And if you read G's case study in the white paper for NCARB, it's very much the same thing. And that was actually where the design thinking piece really came into this, for the sort of the overall white paper, is the NCARB flavor of Lean Startup really relies very heavily on design thinking, particularly the early stages of design thinking, about developing sort of an empathetic understanding of your audiences, and they brought that in to like flavor their version of Lean Startup, and so I think that. And then the good thing that happens because of that, or the positive thing that happens because of that, is that, to Chrissy's point, you then come to own it as a team because you've worked with the concepts and made them yours. And that was a big piece of our project, is kind of getting everybody up to speed on, okay, we've made these decisions about this is the way the AAVSB is going to use this methodology. Now let's make sure that everybody understands that and knows how to use the tools, with our spin on them.
So before, I want to go over to Jamie, and then I want to come back to Chrissy. So Jamie, this is not an easy question to answer, because I learned reading the paper you have 64 pieces of data that you measure for culture to see where people are. But we don't have long enough to go through all 64 of them. But what is a good way to start getting people comfortable with a culture shift? Because I think a lot of times what I see is we don't need culture change, like a dramatic overhaul. We just need to shift a little bit. So what are some ways that people can do that?
So, I mean, what Elizabeth was just talking and Chris were just talking about made me think about a simpler frame, which I think I talk about in the paper as well, which is if you want your culture to support change, there's two basic things you need to pay attention to. One is agency. Are individuals able to take action? Right? That's what Chrissy was talking about. Like, we got to make sure we can do this. Let's get our people able to move forward, to do things. You will not change effectively if you've got a culture where everyone waits for permission, assumes it's somebody else's job, right? Like, that's part of culture that exists, and that makes change hard. The flip side of agency is control. So how much is the top going to control things? And if you want the top to control everything, congratulations, you'll never change. Like, you won't adapt, right? And so, yeah, there's 64 things, and we write about several of them in the paper. If you really want to look at it, sort of detailed culture patterns around innovation and agility, that's kind of cool. But I would start with, do we have too much control and do we have not enough agency in our culture? And what can I do to shift that? And honestly, projects like this that create containers around things and say, you know what, we're not going to redo everything here, but we're going to try and use this process to develop some new products we've never developed before, and here are the rules. And so you can, within this sandbox, you can mess around a little. That's super huge for culture change, is creating those containers within which you can actually do things differently. Because once you do them differently, and if you get good results, then you can say, wow, let's actually build some policies around this, or some structures around it, some practices to really make sure this happens all the time here. Rather than sort of saying, I'm imagining this ideal culture where we're all doing innovation 24/7 and it's going to be great and we should go do that. Like, I'm not a fan of that. I'm more like, let's pick this thing, do it really well, and then expand that into our culture as we need to. So I don't, I mean, I'm a big fan of data and I'm a researcher, right? So I like looking at all the 64 data points and comparing them. Like, I love that stuff. But from a culture change point of view, ask yourself those two questions. Are we controlling too much, and are people not taking action? Do they not have agency? And what can we do to shift that?
Right. Oh, wow. Great explanation. Thank you. And I agree. I think that is the definition between a boss and a manager. A boss, I'm sorry, a boss and or manager and a leader. I think leaders let people do their work and bosses tell you what to do. So I think that's a really important thing. I think we do run into that, unfortunately, a lot in some of the associations, simply because they have been around for a long time and they do have strong staff retention. So you kind of.
But I'm going to throw one more, I'll throw one more thing on this. The reason that we have too much control is because it worked.
Right.
Right? Like, this is the challenge about culture, is that you have, and this is a little bit on the research, competing commitments. We have competing commitments. We're committed to one thing, but then we're committed to this other thing, which is also very good. And that drives behaviors that make it impossible to meet the first one. And so the culture patterns that I talk about are driven by those competing commitments. Around innovation, I was just talking about this in Minnesota. We all love innovation, but we love being right. We love appearing competent. We want to have the right answer all the time. We want to be the smartest person in the room. We do not want to disappoint our board or our stakeholders by saying, I don't know the answer, or I did this and it didn't work. And that is fine. I want you to be competent. That's a good commitment to have. But you push too hard on that and you'll never do the activities that Lean Startup requires. Right? Like, that's it. Like, we got to be forgiving of ourselves because we're pursuing something that is good, which is being competent and doing good things and being smart. We just have to let that not get in the way of the activities we need to do to really unlock the innovation.
Yes, well, and I think it would be kind of frightening to be innovating 24 hours a day, because you do have to have some stability. So
or exhausting, you know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Exhausting.
be really exhausting.
I think so. All those things. But no, that's great. Thank you, Jamie. That's great input.
Well, I actually did want to loop back to, because I wanted to get Chrissy to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, Jamie's idea of, you know, you create this sandbox that allows people to play with the concepts and get familiar with them. So then it becomes this, you know, okay, now we can turn this into practices and procedures and all that kind of thing. And Chrissy, if you could talk a little bit about, you know, we applied Lean Startup first to one of the something that had been launched that wasn't doing so well, and then we ran through it again, and then sort of in kind of a more traditional way where you actually start with the idea, you don't start with an existing product, and then kind of talk about a little bit what's happened at the AAVSB since then.
Yeah.
So, and Chrissy, if I could interject here, I actually had a question very similar to that, because there are layers of culture within any organization. And so kind of building on that, my question for you is, how did you manage and or integrate those layers of culture by using some of these techniques? Because it did mention in the case study, you did have a board, that was involved, and we know that board culture can strongly influence whether or not we move forward or not. So if you could integrate that into your reply too, that would be totally cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, kind of bringing in also what Jamie was talking about is, everybody wants to be right, right? You want to be right, but what does that really look like? Does it mean here's an idea I have and I fail if that idea doesn't hit every benchmark we set or surpass it? But that's the only level of success we can have. So what we had to change our definition of success to is more of an impact definition, right? So when you look at those layers, you have the board of directors, you have leadership, as in our CEO or executive leadership, and you have staff. And what does success look like for each of them? And when you think about the impact that they're trying to make, right? The board has specific duties of responsibility to the organization. What they need is the right information to make the next best decision that they can, right? Staff needs to be able to understand what the strategy is and what we're going for and what does success look like, so they can figure out if it's achievable. And then our executive team needs to understand how you merge those two things together. What the board is looking for strategically, what the staff knows that we can do operationally, and how that comes together. So success starts to look different. Success is not, we made the right decision and it paid off, in dividends. What we're really looking for here is, are we getting the right information to make the next decision? And that's what success becomes. So we have run through the product development framework. In fact, I just left a meeting where we were running through a new product right now, and to come here and talk about it. But success becomes, I have more information and I've tested assumptions, and so I can provide the right information to people who need to make the decision. That's what it becomes for staff. So we've run, like I said, probably almost 10 things through this process now, and not all of them have gone forward, but we have 100% success rate in the process because we have learned valuable information through the process that has let us make a choice in whether we go forward or not. So that's one of the ways it's incorporated into the culture, is we've changed the idea of what success looks like. It's not just you went out and hit the home run. It's we tried something that provided valuable information to the organization about which strategic direction we should go.
And I love that. One of the things that I try to explain to people about using Lean Startup is using the methodology doesn't guarantee that your idea is right and that you're going to make a huge amount of money off of it. What it guarantees you is you're going to get insight into whether or not you have the right idea. And, so it's great to hear also, Chrissy's team, like, we work together and now, like, they're going out there and fishing. They're not coming back to me for like, I need another fish sandwich, right? Because that's the point of developing the methodology and making it your own, is like, now we own this process and we understand it and we can use it and we can continue to use it as a team to continue looking for insight into, have we chosen a real and significant problem for an audience and our solution's going to work for them, and we can, we know how to use this process to give us insight about all that.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about Lean Startup, is it is very approachable for people who want to try to do it. I mean, the tools are easy to understand, the concepts are there and outlined well, and making it your own, I think, seems to be the secret to its success.
Mm-hmm.
So now this is a fascinating subject, and we could probably keep talking about those for another 2 hours, but I think we're going to wrap up a little bit and maintain some mystery so people can go read the white paper.
Which you should 100% do.
Which you should, yes, it's very good. I read it before this episode. But again, all of Elizabeth's white papers are excellent, so I cannot recommend them highly enough. So and that's one writer to another. So, what I'd like to do though, Chrissy, before we start our wrap up,
Mhm.
I'm just curious, did you have a sandbox for your board members?
Interesting. That's a really interesting question. Yeah, we through the process we learn to ask better questions, right? Because one of the things about the process is you're not going on anecdote, right? You're going on action. So even taking that into the process with the board is the sandbox. Part of the sandbox for them was this can happen in many levels in an organization, but somebody gets a great idea, and let's just say it's at the board of directors level, right? They have a great idea, and you know what we should really do? We should do this. Associations can sometimes have difficulty saying, I don't know if we should do that, right? When you get down to the operational level with people in leadership. And this levels the playing field. So they were playing by the same rules as staff. So they were in our sandbox with us. So we're asking them the questions too of, any list of questions we would have about if this is a real problem for a real audience, they would answer too. And we would ask them questions about what makes this strategically significant for you? What are you looking for as a board of directors if we evaluate this idea and see if it comes to pass? And they would have conversations about that and move things back and forth. And that's how we would know, okay, the board of directors has said this is what they're looking for as success for this idea. And as we would run the idea through the product development framework, we could come back, we could run prototypes, and we could come back to them and say, yes, it will work and meet your level of success that you said, or it will work, but it won't meet that level of success. Do you want to go forward and do it or no? Or no, but here's something else we found out. So they were in the process with us. And in fact, they liked it so much that at the beginning of this year, when they did their board evaluation of what's working and what's not working, this was one of the top things they put in what's working for them is the product development framework, the lean startup methodology, and how they are participating in it and getting information from staff so they can make the next right strategic decision for the organization. So they have been hugely supportive and love it.
Oh, that is fantastic. I love hearing that, especially in light of the ongoing work that Jeff DeCania has been doing on the future of association boards, which I see some parallels here between that work and this work, except this work is how you actually get things done and move things forward.
And I would say, if I could just add real quickly too, we create that sandbox for them that keeps them very strategic. So that they don't start getting into that operational space. And they sort of self-correct themselves when they get too operational. So it's been really great for that too.
Oh, wow. That's great. Well, see, and that's good because you have a strategic sandbox and a tactical sandbox, and then you have the sandbox of ideas.
Yep.
We'll go play in there and then we'll figure out how to do it. No, that is fantastic. And again, this is a fascinating subject. And if you have not seen this paper, it came out in June of 2025. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it. Again, get it. It will outline this for you. It has resources and several other case studies besides Chrissy's. So as we move into wrapping this up, because unfortunately all good things must come to an end, I want to go over to Jamie. And Jamie, if you want to add any other thoughts on this, and then what is the one thing you would like the audience to take away today, and how can they get in touch with you at your spiffy new website?
So I'm actually going to piggyback on what this story Chrissy just told, because she's like, well, we started having different conversations with our board and we structured it differently, and we looked and we had different criteria for what success was. And then they started having their conversations differently and they liked it and it started working. And I just want to announce that's culture change. Right. So
Gold star for the AAVSB.
Well, but as much as the message in the white paper is you probably have some culture challenges that you need to fix if you want to do this. There is the flip side of that is if you do this, you'll change your culture. Culture is changed by changing processes, by changing structures, by using technology in new ways, it is not hard, right? My last book was called Culture Change Made Easy, because it's not as hard as people think it is. And so that's kind of the one thing I want to leave everyone with, which is like be be like strategic and intentional, like Elizabeth and Chris here describing. Like, don't just say, well, maybe we should do this differently. Like, no, put some thought into it, design thinking, design it really well. But if you do that and have a learning approach, which is built into Lean Startup, then you will be able to use that to actually change your culture. So that's like stop waiting to change your culture and be intentional about it and do it. So yes, my website, which has been around for a long time, is jamienotter.com. And I am going to mention that it was 20 years ago that I created getmejamienotter.com, which was a blog back when no one knew what blogs were. And I believe it might have inspired Elizabeth to choose getmespark.com. So I'm taking some credit for that. I know I shouldn't be.
You 100% should. It was
Um,
totally the inspiration.
But I'm back 20 years later to jamienotter.com. So that's where and there's a contact form on that website, so you can reach me there.
Great. And your newsletter is now available on Substack, correct?
Yes, I'm exploring Substack, which can be a whole new podcast about whether that's going to work. But jamienotter.substack.com is now my new blog. Like I don't even blog on Jamie Notter anymore. Like how weird is that? But I actually kind of like it. It's got a community feel to it that I like. And so we're running the experiment there, so you can subscribe. That's where all my sort of live content goes.
Lots of good stuff on Substack. I'm on Substack as well. Too bad my mouth doesn't want to work today. I'm on Substack as well. I'm sitting on a bar stool, but I'm not at a bar, so I have no explanation for why my mouth is mushy today. So, well, that's great. So check out Jamie's website, check out his books. They're always worthwhile. Check them out on Substack. There is lots of good stuff on Substack too. So let's go to Elizabeth. What's the one thought you'd like the audience to take away today, and how can they get in touch with you?
The one thought that I would want people to take away from them is to like try this. Go ahead and try it. And you know, pick one idea that that you'd like to do as an experiment, right? Lean Startup is all about experimentation, right? Experiment with the methodology with your next idea for a program, product, or service you'd like to create. The tools and techniques again are not, it's not some, great mystery. There's the white paper. The white paper has an extensive bibliography section with excellent resources for you to learn more. A really good place to start is to read Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, and of course the white paper. But give it a shot. And if you feel like you need some help with that, I am certainly available to do that. And yeah, so you can find more about me, about the white papers, about my Lean Startup consulting, etc., about my membership strategy consulting at my website, which Jamie so helpfully pointed out is Get Me Spark, Spark Consulting, so getmespark.com. And the white papers are all at getmespark.com/white papers. Or you can download the Lean at 10 Culture Eats Methodology for Lunch white paper directly at bit.ly. It's bit.ly/lean at the number 10. And as Jamie mentioned, it's completely free. I don't collect any data. You can just have it, take it, use it, learn from it, check out the bibliography to learn more. And if you need help, give me a shout.
That's great. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. And I do love the Get Me Jamie Notter, Get Me Spark concept, because first of all, I thought it was very clever. And second of all, it always reminds me of those 1960s movies about big business where somebody slams the phone down and says, get me so-and-so.
Sorry, you can even cut this out of the podcast if you want, but do you want to know how that name came to be? Can I tell the story?
Sure.
So I was on a call, and this is Lean at 10 is not unrelated to We've Always Done It That Way at 20, which that book that Jeff DeCania and David Gamble and Mickey Robs and Amy Smith and that I wrote is now 20 years old. It'll be 20 years next year. And I was on a call with all those folks, and we were talking about this book we were going to write. And I said, sorry, I'm late, but I got a call from a client. This was on a Thursday, and they're like, they want me to facilitate a team retreat on Tuesday. Like, I don't usually get that kind of turnaround. And and David Gamble said, wow, sounds like they had a get me Jamie Notter moment.
I love it.
And Jeff DeCania, who was earlier adopter on social media than any of us, said he's been trying to convince me to write a blog. I'm like, who wants to read a blog that I'm going to write? I did like Res 2005. And he stopped. He said, that's going to be the name of your blog. And he bought the domain to force me into doing the blog. And that's how the blog started. And eventually he transferred the domain over to me. But that's where that came from. So anyway.
That's great. Yeah, he was big into blogs. He gave them away at one point, and I won one of his blog giveaways. So my first blog was on TypePad, and it was called Association Puzzle. So, that's a great story. Yeah, that's definitely staying in the podcast.
Okay.
So we do live to record. So no, it's great. People even cuss once in a while on the podcast, but we don't encourage it. Moms and dads out there, we don't encourage it. So Chrissy, let's wrap up with you. You actually apply Lean Startup at AAVSB. So what is one that you would like the audience to take away today? And how can they get in touch with you if maybe they want to try it and they want to ask you some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say challenge your idea of failure, of what failure is, right? Maybe shift that notion a little bit to really think about, is failure if you don't succeed at hitting the goal, or if you don't find out information along the way that lets you know way ahead of time if you're going to hit it or not. So challenge your idea of what failure is, and let your staff and your board challenge that idea too, to shift that notion a little bit more. And when you do that, you can create processes where agency is created and control is created, and doesn't live in a person, but it lives in the process. And that will lead you to success. I will give you a second one too. A second takeaway is get yourself a cheat code. And my cheat code was Elizabeth. They helped AAVSB through this process. Don't think you also have to do this all on your own. Get yourself somebody who understands, who can help challenge you and up your game and how to do this. So those are my takeaways. You can find me obviously on LinkedIn. You can email me directly at AAVSB. My email address is cbagby@aavsb.org. Always happy to have conversations with anybody about this. Talk more about it. I could talk about this all day. You can ask anyone on staff. I could talk about this all day. But always happy to help. Or if anybody else has implemented this, I want to hear from you too, because I want to learn from other people.
Yes.
Always looking to evolve the process too. So happy to talk with folks.
Wonderful. Well, great takeaways. Thanks for the bonus takeaway, Chrissy. So I want to thank my guests, Elizabeth Engel, Jamie Notter, and Chrissy Bagby, who are all lean startup experts and or culture scientists. And they all do go together. We know everything is interrelated. So thank you all for joining me today to talk about this great white paper.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next week with another exciting episode. So don't miss it. Subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast service, because we're going to have even more of these great conversations through the rest of 2025. So again, don't miss them. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our website. It's very easy to navigate. Want to learn about our services? Go to the services page. Want to read my blog? You never know what the heck I'm going to talk about. Sign up for that too. You can find it on the blog page. You can find this episode of the podcast featuring Elizabeth, Jamie, and Chrissy on our podcast page and share it with your friends and colleagues. You can also check out the rest of our library and see what we've been talking about in the past. Learn more about our education program on the education page. We are still offering ethics courses through the end of the year, so you don't want to miss any of those. So thanks again for joining us this week. And on behalf of Elizabeth, Jamie, and Chrissy, we'll see you next time. That's it for this week. I hope you really loved this episode as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Learn more about how our experience and knowledge at Rogue Tulips can give your organization the strategic edge to reach its goals. Check out our website at roguetulips.com. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can work together. Thanks. Hey, everybody.